Hello, we are back today with the same pants you saw last video where we let out the crotch by adding the gusseted. But today we're continuing the process to make these pants fit me by taking in the waist. So let's get started. So as you can see, we already did the fit and it is pretty extreme. So I definitely want to do it this way because I don't want to take any more, as you can see, because I don't want those pockets to touch, but it looks like that's what we need to do. So we're just going to start by marking. I like to do outside and inside where my pins are, just to get a better accurate look. And then that mark down there is where we want to try to ease out by. So then we're going to flip it to the inside. And I've already marked it a little bit, but I'm going to remark that top there. Make sure I've got all of the pins. Great. And now we're going to take them out. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty deep V we've got there. I just want to measure it. Yeah, so 4 inches, even in shop, that is our most, but you can kind of see here, it's almost 4.5. So this is why we typically don't like to take more than 4 inches, because the design can really be affected by that taken. So now afterwards, it's going to be practically touching, which is fine because this has a pretty unique look. So I don't think it'll look too odd. But we'll go ahead and start seam ripping everything. So first we're going to just take off these belt loops. And yeah, hopefully we can just kind of pop them off like that crotch seam we did in the other video. Yeah, I might not even put these back, but we'll just take them out and see if you want to put them back later. Okay. Now it looks like we are going to want to take this stitching out. Typically, jeans waist has like a waistband here, but it looks like this is literally just folded over and has a placket to simulate that with the stitching on top. So we're just going to take out this placket and go from there to see how we want to take it in. And when you take out or when you seam rip, you typically want to seam rip probably about the same amount from the center to your marking outward. That way it gives you enough room to actually sew on the machine, just so it's not just not to make it too hard. Yay, okay. So now it looks like the pockets, that's how they were enclosed. So we'll just want to remember that, so when we put it back, that they're still tucked up there. Now, if I have to, you can kind of see that the pockets we are going to need to take in. So I might need to actually cut these before I take it in, but I'll wait till after to see how much I need to cut, because otherwise if they overlap like that, it's just going to be really bulky and unflattering. But now that we've got our placket off and you can see the top, it looks like all we need to do is take out this top stitching to a little bit past the point we want to ease out, and then we'll be ready to sew. And I'm looking at this and I'm not seeing a chain stitch, which is pretty typical in regular jeans, but I assume because these were handmade, custom ordered, that maybe they just don't have that kind of machine, which is fine, but it makes the seam ripping process a little bit harder. Okay. All right. Now let's go over to the machine and we will sew that together. Now we're over at the machine and I'm ready to sew. I'm just gonna take a rough measurement here because you can see it's gonna be angled to the waistband, and this is gonna be more true to fit than making it straight out for me. So I'm gonna try my best to angle it. It just means your placket, to reset it back on, will need to be angled as well. But we'll start on the outside here, and I'm just going to measure half of it so I know we want about 2 inches there, about, yeah. All right, so now we'll go on the inside and we'll kind of pin it just so all those folds kind of match up with itself. Okay, and you see now I probably need to remark it a little bit just because all my markings were actually on that pocket. So just be mindful of that when you are marking. Get some chalk. And let's actually pin these pockets out of the way so we don't accidentally sew those in our seam. So I've got my pins in just to kind of help keep it from shifting around because I want to make sure the pockets match up. We pin the pockets to the side and we're good to sew at this sharp angle. So I'm just going to take it slow. Okay. Okay, and now we're going to try to ease out by the point down here. That's where we stop taking out the top stitching. So I'm going to kind of let the machine pull itself to where it wants to go to even up. Okay, and now since I have the luxury of these being my own pants, I'm going to go try these on to make sure that that fit is accurate. So let's go throw those on real quick. Okay, so we're taking a look here. I am very happy with the fit. You can kind of see that it's coming out a little bit, but that's just where my spine, like this deep part sits in. But that's okay. But as you can see, like the pockets, they don't look too close. It doesn't look that odd to me. and I like how it sits down. I like how where we eased out. So we like the look, we like the fit. Let's close it up. So we're back over at the machine and we are ready to clean all this mess up. Okay, so we're gonna start by taking the facing back in, and again we're going to want to slightly angle it because that is how we did this outside part. So with the inside, it doesn't really matter if it's in the center. If anything, it might be nicer when it's not in the center, so there's not so much bulk here. But for the guise of wanting it to be as symmetrical as possible, we're going to set it in the center right there. So I'm just going to flip this out. And then put some pins in. Okay, so that we took about a little bit more than 2 inches in at the top. If you need to go back and reference, you can just look here. Let's see, 2 and about 1/4 is the center there. So you're going to want to make sure the top, let's see, the top there. So this is actually our top part. This is going to be 2 1/4. But we're going to want more from there. So I'm just going to do a very slight line. I think it's a little bit easier to guess than to really mark it up because we can always adjust later. So a little bit wider down at the bottom since that's our top, and a little bit narrower there since that is the bottom part. So we're just going to sew that line. And then you can kind of fold, you see, and pull it, and it is lining up pretty well. Just how, you just kind of have to feel it. It's harder to see it. But since that's good, I'm actually just going to go ahead and cut it at this angle so it'll fold a little bit better. Okay, so before we sew all that back together, let's go serge all that extra out right there. Okay. Yeah. All right, so now we're back over at the serger, and I just pinned the pockets out of the way just so they don't get tucked under there. And so we just took in our waist, and now we are ready to serge out this excess. And so I'm going to use my stitch line as a guideline against the presser foot there. So I'm going to place it about right there. You can see my stitch line matches up with the outside right there. Okay. Great, and we'll just kind of go down as far as we sewed. All right, now while we're here, we're going to look at these pockets because again, it looks like they're going to overlap quite a bit. And we do not want that because otherwise it's just going to be very, very bulky. So the biggest issue is really where the pockets overlap themselves because again, now they're really close to each other. So what I think I'm going to go ahead and do is right where I had marked my original take-in on the pocket there, we're just going to serge out this line here. Because again, the pocket, if you stick your hand in, it only goes down it doesn't go up. So that part there isn't going to matter too much if we remove it now. Okay. So since this angle is going to be really harsh, I'm going to go as slow as I can right here to make sure it'll still get serged. So I'm going to serge with my foot following the chalk line that I made there, and then we'll go back in if it needs to be cut more. Okay. So that's where the edge of the pocket is. We're just going to go down. Cut that. And let's see how that lays. Okay. So honestly, it looks like the bigger issue is actually my center one. I might need to go ahead and actually serge closer there so that the over top pocket won't be so smushed. So I'm actually going to go back in and take a little bit more out on that center part there. Okay. I'm going to adjust so it sits a little bit more on top there. Okay. Now let's see if that helped. Yeah, you just kind of have to feel it, but that bulk now is not so like much, just right in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this side so that at the top there, it's still not laying all the way across. So we're going to put that side under the machine. And again, we'll just follow the marking that I already have. Okay. All right, so we just serged out that pocket on both sides, and then we also serged out that excess and the center seam there. So now when we fold it over like that, the bulk won't be as much right at these pockets where they meet. So you can kind of see it on the outside, and you just are going to have to kind of feel it, that is a lot less bulky and it's not causing any bubbling. But once we're able to press it and do some top stitching, it'll also really smooth it out. So now let's go back over to our sewing machine and close up this facing. So now we're over at the sewing machine, and we are going to first do our top stitching so that we can match that bottom there. So down here I can see that it's folded this way, the seam allowance to stitch. So we're going to make sure, especially right where these pockets meet, that that is folded the same way. See, yeah, like that. So we're just going to kind of overlap those pockets. I'm going to hold that down, and I'm just going to give it some pins to hold it in place. Yeah, just like that. And then, yeah, same with the pockets up top. I just want to make sure they don't sit weird. So we're going to overlap them up there, and then we'll pin it on the outside. Great. Okay. So now we are ready to top stitch that edge. So we're going to start at the very top there, move the facing out of the way. So it's a little bit hard to see, but basically the inside edge here, I'm lining up here on the seam so I can get that nice edge top stitch. Okay. Oh, and before I get too far, let me lengthen. I'm doing it about 3.5 here. I don't want it to be too wide, but that'll be nicer. Okay, make sure everything's flat. Okay, we're just going to match up with that original top stitching. Okay, yay! All right, that looks great. Love it. Okay, so now for that second line of stitching, well, actually, let's look at the underside. Okay, that looks good to me. It's nice and overlapped. It's sitting nice. Let's just cut that thread there. Okay, so now for that second line of stitching, what I like to do is use the edge, the outer edge of the foot, and follow the stitching line. Not the edge of the pant, but the stitching line. That way it'll match up with the original stitching. Okay. Okay, and then I see, wow, this is really hard to see, but I think, yeah, right there. It's going to be our stopping point. Okay, now we have the facing to sew back on. But first, we had two belt loops right here, and I think I just want to add one back right in the center there to make it look a little bit more uniform. So how these were set in were they were stitched between the placket and then top stitched. So I'm going to actually center that up there so that when it folds, it'll be inside. So I'm just going to center this out. I'll put a pin in it, and we'll give it a little stitch so it stays in place. Just on the edge there. Okay, so now we'll go to our facing. And you can kind of see right here that I'm going to want more room to stitch these back together. So that just means I need my seam ripper and open this up a little bit more. And then it was sewn first, and then they had this this top stitching there, so I'm going to take a little bit of just the top stitching out. Okay, and then we'll make sure the other side looks good. I'm going to open up it a little bit more as well. This is just going to make it easier to sew the top back on. Okay, so now, oh my goodness, all these threads, there's so many. Let's just kind of cut some out to get a better view. Okay, so we're just lining up what was already there with that seam allowance. Again, you can see where the original stitching kind of was because we didn't pull up all of it. I'm just going to pin it down so we have easier time. Okay. Yay, okay. So now you just want to make sure you go back over the stitching. It looks like it stops there. And we're just going to follow that seam allowance, which is, it looks like a 1/2 inch. Okay, yay! So we're gonna do this understitching here. Let's see, I think it's right there. So we're just gonna go in it. And sort of like we were doing before with the top stitching on the center back seam, my edge here is gonna follow the edge of this seam right there. And just make sure that that is folded over. It should kind of naturally do it. But there we go. And just pull. Okay, and I'm actually going to do a little bit more seam ripping because the edge is going to get really hard to get to if I don't. Okay. Yeah, the stitching is very hard to see, but it looks like it ends right here. So I'm just making sure nothing's caught underneath. Yay! Beautiful. Okay, so now we're going to fold this edge, place it down, and I'm actually going to go ahead and pin this on from the inside so that the outside looks good. So typically we would sew this back from the outside because it's actually on a typical, well, you know, I lied. It depends on the pant. A suit pant, you might understitch, so that's like just below this band you'd sew. With jeans, you would sew right on top. But you want to sew right on top on the outside because typically this kind of facing is the waistband itself, just doubled. So I'm actually going to sew on the inside here because it'll look even on the outside if I follow this line. At least that's my hope. So we're going to try that first. And then we'll go back if it looks ugly, but I think it'll look good. Okay. Great. And since, let's see, so my belt loop ends there, I'm actually going to go ahead and pull those up since they're just top stitched, and we'll put them back after we have finished the facing. Just so they're out of our way. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to find, it looks like we stopped about right there. And again, using our edge, the inner edge of the foot to match the edge of the facing. So as you can see, this actually has an intense curve, and that's just because of the severity of how much we took it in the center. So I'm going to want to make sure I'm sewing it with kind of a pull and follow it. Otherwise, the outside is going to look kind of mangled looking. I don't know. It's just going to look bad. So we are just going to pull it and see how it looks at the end. All right. So this is going to be that curve we want to follow. So you can go really slow to make sure you're pulling really tight. Okay, and this is the reveal. How does the outside look? Ooh, I don't hate it. So you can kind of see the original stitching line was a little bit higher, but the placement of it I think is fine. That can happen sometimes. Again, when you take in so much here, it dips and it makes the original stitching higher. So all that matters is after we press it, if this is still kind of, you see those folds there, if that's still warped, you could, I could go back and undo it because that's going to be just how it was sewn with that intense curve. Okay, so I'm over at the iron now. We just finished that facing. The inside looks great. But the moment of truth is going to be pressing this and seeing if it lays a little bit better. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a hard press, and already I like it. It really smoothed it out already on that side. So we'll give it another hard press. And then more. Okay, yeah. So you can kind of see if I pull it tight, it's laying nice. So this is going to be the best. I honestly think it's going to sit. Again, it is because of the severity of how much we took in here compared to down here. That is very standard when you're taking in this kind of jean waist. And that is also why we try not to take in more than 4 inches, because it does affect the fit. And we want it to look good for you. The last thing I need to do is just top stitch those belt loops on, and we'll meet you over there for the reveal. Okay, so these are the final product. I absolutely love it. The fit is really, really good. I love how it's now, you see the waist is against my back finally. So yeah, the pockets look great. That looks great. Now, I do have one issue though, which I did not think about. It is really hard to get into these. So we're gonna do a third video of how to fix that. And we're just gonna lengthen the zipper. So stay tuned for the next video and you'll see some magic happen. All right, so like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in part 3 with these awesome pair of pants. All right, see you soon.